All right, Browns fans, let's talk for a second. If you've been following everything happening with the team lately, you know this offseason has been full of interesting moves, a few surprises, and a lot of questions about where this roster is headed. Some additions might not look huge at first glance, but when you start connecting the dots, it feels like the team is building something very specific for the upcoming season. So let's break down what's really going on and why these moves could matter a lot more than people think. But before we keep you well informed of the details, click the like button and subscribe to stay updated on the latest news. The Cleveland Browns have quietly made another move in free agency, and while it might not be the headline-grabbing signing some fans were hoping for, it's one that could play a very important role in how this offense is built for the upcoming season. Cleveland has agreed to terms with tight end Jack Stoll on a one-year deal, adding a veteran presence who brings a very specific skill set to this roster. Stoll arrives in Cleveland after time with the Philadelphia Eagles and most recently the New Orleans Saints. At 28 years old, he's not coming in as a flashy receiving threat or a player expected to put up big numbers through the air. In fact, his production as a receiver has been modest throughout his career, never surpassing 123 receiving yards in a season. But that's not why the Browns targeted him. What he brings to the table is something Cleveland has clearly been prioritizing during this offseason: blocking. The Browns knew they needed help at the tight end position, especially with David Njoku not returning and choosing to test free agency. Cleveland already has Harold Fannin Jr. to handle the receiving duties at the position, so the focus shifted toward finding someone who can help stabilize the run game and protect the quarterback. That's exactly where Jack Stoll fits in. His reputation as a strong inline blocker makes him an ideal option for two tight end formations, something this offense has historically relied on when the run game is working. And that brings us to a bigger picture storyline developing in Cleveland. The Browns appear to be shaping this offense around the philosophy of Todd Monken. The expectation is that Monken's system will lean heavily on strong blocking schemes, balanced offense, and creative use of personnel packages. Adding players like Stoll may not dominate headlines, but these types of moves suggest Cleveland is building a very specific structure for how they want to attack defenses next season. But of course, as much as roster additions matter, the biggest question surrounding the Browns right now still revolves around the quarterback position. Reports coming out this offseason have suggested that Deshaun Watson could still be part of the competition for the starting job. However, there are major doubts about whether he can realistically win that battle after multiple serious injuries, including 2 Achilles tears and shoulder issues that have kept him from playing a full season during his time in Cleveland. Instead, the spotlight may be shifting toward Shedeur Sanders. Unlike last season, when he was not truly part of the quarterback battle, this offseason appears to be very different. Sanders finished last year as the last man standing for the Browns at the position, starting the final 7 games of the season. Because of that, he is expected to get significant reps during training camp, and many believe the job could actually be his to lose. That doesn't mean the competition will be simple. Sanders still has areas of development in his game, particularly with decision-making and avoiding forcing throws into dangerous situations. The big question now is whether Todd Monken can bring out the full potential that the Browns believe Sanders possesses. If that happens, Cleveland could finally have stability at the most important position on the field. Meanwhile, the front office has been active in other areas as well. The Browns have made multiple roster moves to strengthen the offensive line and defense. Zion Johnson has been added on a 3-year deal, Titus Howard was acquired via trade and extended for 3 more years, and Quincy Williams was brought in to replace Devin Bush. Cleveland also added Elton Jenkins, a former Pro Bowl guard who can play both guard and center, giving the offensive line more flexibility and experience. The team also placed a second-round tender on safety Ronnie Hickman, showing just how much they value his role in the secondary and ensuring that if another team tried to sign him, Cleveland would receive significant compensation. And even with all these moves already made, the Browns may not be finished. Several notable free agents remain available, including wide receivers like Tyreek Hill, Jawan Jennings, and Stephon Diggs. Other veterans such as Deebo Samuel and Keenan Allen are also still out there, though their age could make Cleveland hesitant. On the offensive line, left tackles Rasheed Walker and Taylor Decker remain unsigned, while cornerbacks Marshawn Lattimore, Rasul Douglas, and Trevon Diggs are still available if the Browns decide to strengthen the secondary further. So the big debate right now among Browns fans is simple. Cleveland has already made several strategic moves and added depth across multiple positions, but there are still big names on the market who could make an immediate impact. Should the Browns make one more major move in free agency? Or do you think the team already has the roster it needs and should focus entirely on the draft from here? The other layer to this entire situation is how the Browns are approaching the rest of free agency while this quarterback battle begins to take shape. Because while Cleveland has already made several strategic moves, it's clear the front office is still evaluating whether one more addition could push this roster over the top heading into the draft. If you look at the current landscape of available players, there are still some big names out there at positions the Browns could address. At wide receiver, players like Tyreek Hill, Jawan Jennings, and Stephon Diggs are still on the board. However, there are questions attached to each of them. Hill's availability early in the season is uncertain, which could make teams hesitant. Meanwhile, veterans like Deebo Samuel and Keenan Allen are also still available, but their age may make Cleveland reluctant to go in that direction. The Browns appear to be looking for long-term fits rather than short-term splashes, which is why they haven't aggressively pursued those names yet. Another position that has drawn attention is offensive tackle, specifically the left tackle spot. Two names that remain unsigned are Rasheed Walker and Taylor Decker. Considering Cleveland's clear emphasis on strengthening the offensive line this offseason, it's somewhat surprising that neither of those players has been brought in. The fact that the Browns haven't made that move could signal something very important about their draft strategy. There's a growing belief that Cleveland may be planning to address the left tackle position in the first round of the draft instead of paying a large contract to a veteran free agent. Walker, for example, is believed to be seeking a massive deal, and that price tag may simply be too high for teams that are not convinced he's worth that level of investment. If the Browns feel they can find a long-term starter in the draft at a lower cost, it would make sense for them to hold off for now. On the defensive side of the ball, the secondary is another area that could still see movement. There are several notable cornerbacks still available in free agency, including Marshawn Lattimore, Rasul Douglas, and Trevon Diggs. Cleveland has already taken steps to strengthen parts of the roster, but adding another experienced defensive back could give the team even more depth in a league that relies heavily on passing attacks. What's interesting about this offseason for the Browns is that many of their moves have been calculated rather than flashy. The additions of players like Zion Johnson, Elton Jenkins, Quincy Williams, and Titus Howard show a clear effort to reinforce the trenches and build a more balanced roster. These are the kinds of moves that don't always dominate headlines, but can dramatically change how a team performs over the course of a season. And when you combine those roster improvements with the offensive philosophy expected under Todd Monken, you can start to see the vision Cleveland is building toward. A strong offensive line, effective blocking tight ends like Jack Stoll, and a run-friendly system could allow the Browns to control games while developing stability at quarterback. But everything still circles back to that quarterback battle. Training camp is going to be one of the most important periods this franchise has faced in years. Deshaun Watson will be part of the competition, but there are serious doubts about whether he can return to anything close to his previous form after multiple major injuries and years of inconsistent play in Cleveland. The Browns have seen firsthand how difficult that situation has been, and many around the organization are skeptical that he can truly win the job. That's why so much attention is now focused on Shedeur Sanders. After starting the final 7 games last season, he enters this offseason with real momentum. For the first time, he's expected to receive legitimate first-team reps and a fair opportunity to prove he can be the future of the franchise. If he shows growth in decision-making and continues developing under Todd Monken's system, there's a real chance he could emerge as Cleveland's starting quarterback in 2026. And if that happens, all of these smaller roster moves we've been talking about might start to make a lot more sense. Building the offensive line, strengthening the run game, adding blocking tight ends, and reinforcing the defense could be the foundation for supporting a young quarterback stepping into a major role. So, Browns fans, this is where I want to hear from you again. Looking at everything that's happened this offseason, the signings, the quarterback battle, and the players still available in free agency, who do you believe will actually win the Browns' starting quarterback job in 2026? Deshaun Watson, Shedeur Sanders, or someone else the team might bring in? And if you enjoyed breaking down this developing situation with us, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and click the video that's on your screen right now, because the latest Cleveland Browns news and updates are always waiting for you right here first. Go Browns!